My name is Valentine Nonyela, and I played Fireman Maddox in a series of London's Burning. I can't remember if it was series 2 or 3. Oh, okay. It was a really long time ago. I think it was in 1988. And I got a call um, from my agent. Um, just very matter of fact. Hello, okay, you've got to go down to LWT. It's for a part in London's Burning. And it was just very matter of fact. And I went down and I think I did a reading. And I remember thinking, I'm not quite sure that it's gone that well, because I really loved the show. I really loved the original pilot with Gary McDonald, and I really loved the series with Trevor in it. So I was a really big fan of the show. Get the part, but I remember coming out of LWT, and I remember thinking, I don't think it's gone all that well, but never mind. And then I think it was maybe about a month later, I think. I can't quite remember. I don't know what's happened to my memory. Maybe it's long COVID. It was actually, it's about 20, what am I talking about? 34 years ago. So I think it was about a month. And then my agent called me and said, okay, you've got it. I'm sending the contract and you're going to start at such and such a date. And it was really wonderful, actually. Yes, that's a really good question, because my storyline was not based at Blackwall. My storyline was based at another watch, at another station. And what was really interesting is that we did the filming at the fire station, which is at Old Kent Road. Okay. Now, I grew up in Deptford, in south east London. So I grew up not far from Old Kent Road, and not at all from where the filming took place. And funnily enough, I think when we were filming, I was driving up from my mum's in Forest Hill, and I had my little Mini, and I remember it wasn't taking me long to get to filming because I was coming from Forest Hill, and I was driving to Old Kent Road, and I was parking, and enjoyed it. It wasn't at Blackwall, wherever they filmed that. It was done at the fire station at Old Kent Road. That's where we filmed my storyline. Well, look, what I know is that the London Fire Brigade and LWT really did want to make an issue of trying to get more ethnic minorities into the fire service, and were aware of a culture, because humans are human beings, but if you have a culture which says that you're going to earn the right for me to trust you to save your life, if need be, you're going to have to accept that being part of the team is taking racial abuse, which, let's be totally honest, that was the culture 34 years ago in the police force, in London's Fire Brigade, and many others. So I'm sure in that culture for black firefighters, I'm sure it was difficult in that culture for female firefighters. And I know that the London Fire Service were determined to encourage more diversity and more ethnic minorities to come forward into the fire service. Did that storyline help? I don't know. We'd have to look at the data to see whether it helped. But I think it was something that at that time was a really powerful storyline and a really powerful message for them to send. And I think the program makers and their consultants at the Fire Brigade have to be commended in that from the outset they had black crew members, and from the outset they had female firefighters. The outset, they made it clear that you know, if you were going to join the service, you know, you had a right, whether you was, you know, a woman or whether you was a person of to them equal opportunities. So I would have to look at the data to see whether the storyline helped in terms of recruitment and retention. But I know that it was something which was a really strong storyline for that time. No, I think that was there for a storyline, and because it was at another watch, then I think you know, doing those 4 or 5 episodes that I did, I think was, you know, enough for the storyline. Yes, perhaps maybe we could have done the full. We could have done the full series, but you know, obviously, because you've got the storylines that are happening at Blackwall, I think it may have been difficult for me to do the full series just with the storyline outside of Blackwall. So I think it was just right. Maybe another episode or so. I think, yeah, actually, it was just right. I really thoroughly enjoyed doing London's Burning. I thoroughly enjoyed working with the team. I mean, Trevor has been, Trevor Etienne has been a mentor and a role model for me as a young actor, and with what he's gone on to do since he left London's Burning, and he was one of the first UK actors of colour to go and make it in the States, you know, to go and do big films, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean, Black Hawk Down, do big American series. I mean, it was really, Trevor was a pioneer. And really, you know, Idris Elba, all the big black actors who are doing well in the States, they owe a lot to Trevor Etienne from London's Burning, because Trevor Etienne was the first to go to America, to take you know, that difficult decision to say, look, you know, we you know, there are good actors and actresses of colour in the UK, and I think that all the work that pioneers like Trevor have done are paying off now. And when I say all the work that pioneers like Trevor, I also mean his role in London's Burning. And the work he's done there in terms of audiences being used to characters of colour in series and accepting them, and moving on, you know, from the 70s and 60s, maybe where they weren't so many, to the 80s where it was starting to emerge, and to now where, you know, it is I think, in a good place in terms of diverse casting and storylines. I think we're in a really good place. I think so. I owe a lot. I think a lot of actors and actresses of colour owe a lot to Trevor and the work he did at London's Burning, in London's Burning, and outside of London's Burning. And we owe a lot to the producers of shows like London's Burning for their courage and their bravery in being the pioneers of diverse casting, being the pioneers of storylines which included women and people of colour, you know, as characters and not just as sort of like stereotypes. And I think that's what I really enjoyed watching London's Burning. And I really enjoyed the pace and the stories, and all the characters felt like real people and had an integrity and a sincerity to them. My storyline, you know, my storyline character's name was Fireman Maddox, and his nickname was Monkey Nuts. You know, so they, you know, as part of the initiation thing, straight away they gave him a racial nickname, and then as part of the initiation ceremony, unintentionally, because they just meant to scare him, but you know. A call came out and they left him and he nearly drowned. So his nickname was Monkey Nuts, which was not a very nice nickname. I think it's really, really interesting about the character I played because I was a young person playing a young person. So when I filmed London's Burning, I was 18. And so you would have had young lasses joining. Who were really babies. Do you know what I mean? Just proud that they can just drive. So you would have had young lads joining the service, and what they would have had to put up with would have been quite difficult, you know, before they got accepted. And if you can think about that in the police force, and if you can think about that in the army, then it must have been really, really difficult for some of the women, these British men and women of colour. It must have been quite difficult 34 years ago, 35 years ago, and preceding that, to join these services within that culture. If we look at the culture and the problems we still have in the metropolitan today, can you imagine what it was like 34, 35 years ago? So if you can imagine what it was like to go and watch a football match in those days, when people were throwing bananas, when people were booing. I remember at that time, if you went to watch England play and John Barnes would get the ball, the crowd would boo him. So it was, you know, the nicknames and that, you know, because I'm a South East London person, and I know Cockneys like a bit of banter, which is all well and good. But you can imagine a young 18-year-old, they would have found it very difficult, you know, to join those emergency services within those cultures. So I hold my hat out to all the men and women within those services who have fought to change the culture. Okay, all the men and women in the nation who sort of said, okay, look, we can have a banter, we can have a joke, but it mustn't get to the point where we stop people in our country, whether they want to join the army, the fire brigade, the police, of coming forward and giving their services, because not everybody is the same. And I think so. That storyline I really enjoyed. In the sense that I liked the fact that it was really important, you know. A lot of the time during that time when I was 18, a lot of the parts that I would go up for were stereotypes, you know. And it was either the cool young DJ, the cool roller skate. It was all, it was really stereotypes. And I got to the point where I shouldn't really. And it wasn't because I was being big-headed or because I thought I was something that I wasn't. But I got to the point where sometimes I used to go to castings and point out to them that some of the characters were stereotypes, and I don't think it endeared me to casting directors or whatever. But this part was a really solid part about a real person within a service, and the problems of trying to join a service with a certain culture, so that's how it is. Okay, I did some basic training related to because we had to do the scenes where I was going to be underwater so I didn't show that I didn't drown or something like that, but I didn't get to use any of the equipment or do the type of training that, say, the regular characters would have done. So for my storyline, I didn't do those, but I did do some training related to being underwater and to be able to sort of do those scenes safely, and to give a signal if I was unsafe, so that maybe a stunt person could take over, because I was tied up underwater in the tub, so that could go dangerously wrong if I was in distress and I didn't say, because yes, I could drown because I was tied up, so I wouldn't have no means to, if water was going to my brain, I wouldn't have no means. So we had to do some training because I'll just get brain damage. So I did some training around that, but I didn't do any of the fire training. No. Yes, I do. I remember we were filming one evening, and I'm a big boxing fan, so we were filming one evening, and the dining bus was a double-decker bus that we used to go and eat, and I was filming, and at that time, I think Terry Marsh was world champion, or Terry whatever, but I went up onto the dining bus, and then there was Glenn, and Glenn was there with Marsh, old champion. I went, "Oh, Terry, he's all right, mate." I said, "Oh, wow." He said, "All right." And Glenn said, "Oh, meet my mate, Terry Marsh." I said, "Oh, all right, Terry, I love your fights." And that was a real memory. And he gave me an autograph, and I was asking him about his fights. So that was a real memory that, for me, if you can imagine, I was a young lad, and I got this job, and I got to meet my stars, and then one day film, and I get a boxing camp as well. So yeah, I remember very much that episode, and obviously coming onto the set and meeting Trevor, and the kind words and the encouragement Trevor gave was fantastic. But the old cast members were fantastic. But that day, yeah, meeting Glenn, going up, and Terry Marsh being there, and meeting him and sitting down and talking to him, that was really lovely. So it would be equivalent of today, you're doing a job and you go up and you're seeing, I don't know, Anthony Joshua, or you somebody of that ilk, and suddenly, so because he was, in those days there wasn't all the belts, so if you became a world champion, you were more or less a world champion, So yeah, I got to meet Terry Marsh, and at that time that was fantastic. I'm still in contact with Trevor Etienne, but nobody else. I would love to get in touch with some of the other cast members who I was friends with, but we just lost touch after some time, which is a shame. But yeah, apart from Trevor, I'm not in touch with any other of the cast members. Definitely, I was just thinking, look, they've got in the States Chicago Hope, and that is always topping the ratings there, and they've kept with it. Me personally, I think if they were to reboot London's Burning or set it somewhere else, but I think it will be absolutely popular once again. I think it would go straight to the top of the ratings, and I'm sure that it will happen at some point because it's just crying out for it. So whether it's the BBC, whether it's ITV, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Amazon, I'm absolutely sure that they will do another fire service show. Whether they call it London's Burning or not, I'm not sure, but I'm sure that they will do some sort of reboot. I wouldn't be surprised if they called it London's Burning because it's got that brand, but I'm very sure at some point, because I just think it's a ratings winner waiting to happen. There's so much drama that you get out of the fire service and the characters who work in it, that I'm sure that in the future there will be another firefighting series, and I'll certainly be watching it because I think it makes for great drama. No, I just think it's a lovely program, and I'll be watching now. And yeah, and I think some of the stories from the extras on it and some of the stories from the crew are almost going to be as interesting, if not more interesting, than from some of the prime cast members. As I say, it was a long time ago, but I remember it being a really, really friendly, professional set. And it was a real joy to work on. It was a real joy to work on. Listen, thank you very much for this wonderful podcast and video that you're doing. Long may it continue, and I'll be watching. And keep up the good work, and I look forward to seeing some more episodes.